You don't actually understand time, you just feel familiar with it. You wear a watch. You notice birthdays piling up. You remember what happened yesterday and make plans for tomorrow. Because of that, time feels obvious, almost instinctive. But that feeling isn't time itself. It's a perception, an internal effect generated by your brain, a kind of useful illusion. Most people carry around a poetic picture, time as a river, the past behind you, the future ahead, and you drifting helplessly along in the current. It's a comforting image. It feels intuitive. But the moment you look at it closely, it collapses. If time is a river, then ask a simple question: how fast is it flowing? 1 second per second. That statement sounds scientific, but it's empty. It explains nothing. It's like saying an object is exactly as long as itself. You haven't described reality, you've just gone in a circle. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Time doesn't flow. It doesn't drag you forward. It doesn't move at all. And if you think counting seconds or feeling time pass gives you insight into how the universe works, you're about to be very disappointed. The confusion starts inside your head. You probably trust your internal sense of time. You shouldn't. It's not a clock, it's a patchwork of mental shortcuts, a translation system, not a measuring device. Try this. Silently count to 60. No timer, just your mind. You believe you're tracking time, but you're really running a personal algorithm, one that's different for everyone. Some people count by sound. There's a quiet voice in their head saying 1, 2, 3. Interrupt that voice, ask them a question, and the whole system collapses. The count is gone. Others don't use sound at all. They use images. Maybe they see numbers sliding past, like a measuring tape or a digital ticker clicking forward. For them, counting doesn't interfere with speaking or reading. They can scan a page, fold laundry, even notice patterns in fabric while that internal visual counter keeps moving smoothly. To people, same task, completely different mental machinery. That's the key insight. What you experience as time passing isn't a feature of the universe. It's a feature of you. It changes from brain to brain, from moment to moment. It's not stable. It's not universal. It's a controlled hallucination, useful but deeply misleading. So when physics talks about time, your feelings don't get a vote. Physics has to be ruthless. It throws away intuition and asks only one question that matters. How do we measure it? Not what does time really feel like? Not what is its essence? Those are questions for philosophers with long afternoons. In physics, time is operational. It's defined by what it does, not how it feels. And when you strip it down that way, the definition becomes shockingly simple. Time is just a way to order events, nothing more. Imagine laying out a deck of cards on a table. One card comes before another. Some are in the middle. Some are at the end. The cards aren't moving. The table isn't flowing. There's no current pulling them along. There's just an arrangement, a structure. Events are the cards. Time is the table. When we say time passes, all we're really doing is scanning the lineup in a particular direction. And this misunderstanding confusing order with motion leads directly to the biggest mistake people make when they think about time. You don't just imagine time as flowing, you imagine it as a container, a giant invisible box where the universe sits. Stars, planets, atoms, light all placed inside it. And on the wall of this cosmic box, you picture a clock calmly ticking away. Even if everything inside disappeared, you assume the clock would keep going, tick, tick, tick. That idea feels obvious, and it's completely wrong. That picture comes straight from Newton, and physics has moved on. Time is not a background stage. It's not something the universe happens inside of. Time is not there first, waiting patiently for matter to show up. Time is a measure of change. If nothing changes, no atoms vibrating, no particles moving, no energy shifting, then time doesn't slow down. It doesn't freeze. It simply stops being defined. A second is meaningless without a physical process to mark it. No pendulum swinging, no quartz crystal vibrating, no cesium atom oscillating, no change, no time. Time is not separate from the universe. Time is a property of the universe. This is where your intuition rebels. You say, but time does things. Time makes me age. Time makes food rot. Time causes decay. No, it doesn't. That's a trick of language. Time is not an actor. It has no hands. It doesn't reach into your body and wrinkle your skin. It doesn't sneak into the fridge and spoil the milk. Bacteria do that. Chemical reactions do that. Entropy does that. Time doesn't cause events. Time records them. Blaming time is like saying inches built a house. Inches didn't build anything. Builders did. Inches just describe where the walls ended up. In the same way, time is the ruler, not the worker. And this ruler analogy turns out to be far more dangerous than it first appears. Because once you accept that time is just a measuring tool, a way of marking distances between events, you're forced to ask a terrifying question. What if the ruler itself isn't rigid? This isn't science fiction. It's experimental fact. For a long time, we assumed a second was universal. 1 second here, 1 second there. A clock on Earth, a clock on Mars, tick-tock, perfectly synchronized. It feels right. It feels necessary. And it's false. Clocks tick at different rates depending on where they are and how fast they're moving. This isn't because the clocks are broken. It's not mechanical error. It's reality behaving exactly as it should. To see why, imagine driving a car across a huge flat surface. You can drive straight north, or you can turn slightly and drive northeast. Your speed doesn't change, but how it's distributed does. The more you steer east, the less of your motion goes north. Now replace north with time. Replace east with space. That's the core idea behind relativity. Motion through space steals motion from time. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. Not metaphorically, literally. And once you understand that, the old picture of a universal ticking clock completely falls apart. You are never standing still in the universe. Not ever. You are always moving at a fixed cosmic speed, but that motion is split between space and time. Think of it like a budget. If you're sitting motionless in a chair, you're spending almost all of that budget moving through time. You're racing into the future at full throttle, 1 second per second. But the moment you get up, take a step, or climb into a rocket, something changes. Some of that motion gets redirected into space. And the math is unforgiving. If more motion goes into space, less is available for time. Your clock slows down, your aging slows down. Nothing is malfunctioning. You didn't damage the clock. You simply turned the steering wheel. This isn't poetry, it's geometry. Now take this idea to the extreme. The universe has a speed limit, the speed of light. If you could travel that fast, you would be using all of your motion to move through space. There would be nothing left over for time. From your own perspective, time would stop completely. That's not a metaphor. For light itself, time does not pass. A photon is emitted and absorbed in the same instant, no waiting, no aging, no before or after. From its point of view, the universe is frozen. At this point, your intuition objects. But I don't feel younger when I sprint, you say? Of course you don't. You're moving absurdly slowly by cosmic standards. At human speeds, these effects are microscopic, but they're real. So real that engineers have to account for them every single day. GPS satellites are racing around Earth at thousands of kilometers per hour. Their clocks tick at a different rate than the clocks on the ground. If we didn't correct for that difference, your phone would tell you you're miles away from where you actually are within a single day. Time slowing down isn't philosophy, it's engineering. But there's another illusion, hiding in plain sight, one that feels even more fundamental. We don't just experience time. We experience it as having a direction. The past feels locked. The future feels open. You can remember breakfast, but not dinner. Why? This is strange. Because the core equations of physics don't care about direction. Most of them work just fine forward or backward. If you record a planet orbiting a star and play the video in reverse, nothing looks wrong. Gravity doesn't complain. But try the same trick with an egg. An egg falls, hits the floor, and shatters. Play that backward, and everyone instantly knows it's fake. The yolk doesn't leap up, reassemble itself, and politely zip back into the shell. This difference has nothing to do with time itself. It has everything to do with probability. There are countless ways for an egg to be broken, cracked in half, shattered into dust, splattered across the floor in infinite messy patterns. But there is exactly one way for an egg to be whole. Order has very few possibilities. Disorder has almost unlimited ones. As systems evolve, they naturally drift from the rare and ordered toward the common and messy. This tendency has a name, entropy. And entropy, nothing else, is what gives time its arrow. What you experience as time moving forward is really the universe becoming more disordered. It's like starting with a perfectly arranged deck of cards and shuffling it again and again. Every shuffle increases randomness. You can't unshuffle the deck just by wishing. Your brain doesn't sense time directly. It senses change in disorder. You are, at your core, a mess detector. When you distinguish past from future, what you're really distinguishing is less messy from more messy. If the universe ever reached a state of maximum disorder where everything was evenly spread out and nothing interesting happened, your sense of time would collapse. No broken eggs, no memories forming, no direction. In a universe at complete thermal equilibrium, the arrow of time disappears. Now think back to those people counting seconds in their heads. The ones hearing a voice versus the ones seeing a mental tape measure. Both are trying to force a rigid, linear structure onto something that isn't rigid at all. Time, as the universe actually uses it, is flexible, relative, and deeply tied to change. We build these mental counting machines not because they're accurate but because we need them to survive. We evolved to survive, not to decode the universe. You need to know when the tiger will pounce and when the crops are ready, not what time is. So evolution gave you a rough stopwatch, not a theory. Your brain tracks duration just well enough to keep you alive. Accuracy was optional. Efficiency was everything. That's why your attention is glued to now. Now is where food is eaten. Now is where danger strikes. Now is where decisions matter. But in physics, now is a dangerously unstable idea. If you and I are standing side by side, our sense of now lines up closely enough that we don't notice any problem. But stretch the situation. Put you on a planet a million light years away. Now start walking away from me. Suddenly, your presence slices through the universe at a different angle than mine. Events you call happening right now might land in what I call the future. Things I insist are happening now might already be in your past. There is no universal present moment draped over the cosmos like a sheet. The universe doesn't update all at once. Instead, physics describes reality as a complete structure, a four-dimensional block of events. Not a movie playing, but a finished object like a loaf of bread. Past, present, and future are all baked in. What you call now is just a slice. And how you slice that loaf depends on how fast you're moving. This is where your intuition screams in protest. It feels illegal. It feels like being told that left is right. But the discomfort comes from a translation error. You're trying to express the universe's high-level geometry using low-level biological instincts. You're counting socks when you should be measuring light beams. When you force reality into the shape your intuition prefers, you get paradoxes and confusion. When you let reality speak in its own language, the equations fall into place and suddenly the universe behaves. But even this isn't the deepest problem. We've talked about how time is measured. We've talked about why it has a direction. But there's a darker question waiting underneath everything. The beginning. If time is just a way of ordering changes, what happens when you rewind the universe all the way back to the first frame? As we run the cosmic film backward, space shrinks, temperatures soar, energy densities explode. Eventually, the rules we rely on, space, atoms, even time itself, start to dissolve. All of our clocks exist inside the universe. Atoms, planets, light beams. Every way we measure time depends on the universe already being there. So, if the universe itself emerged in an event we call the Big Bang, does it even make sense to ask what happened before it? This is the ultimate stress test of your new definition of time. If time is just a system for ordering events within the universe, then asking what came before the universe, maybe like asking what's north of the North Pole, the question is grammatically fine but geometrically meaningless. There is no further north. There may be no before time itself begins. And yet, your brain resists. That internal counter is still running. 1, 2, 3. You want a backstory. You want the tape measure to stretch infinitely in both directions. It's deeply unsettling to imagine that the ruler itself had a starting edge, that the counting machine had an on switch. This is the friction between psychology and cosmology. We are finite creatures built from neurons and electricity, trying to grasp the infinite. Our tools are crude. Our intuitions are parochial. And honestly, it's miraculous that we understand anything at all. Think again about those mental patterns, the voice versus the tape measure. One system uses language. The other uses images. Physics went through the same transition. Classical mechanics was like verbal counting, intuitive, linear, perfect for everyday life. But the universe isn't everyday life. Relativity is that visual tape measure. It's the upgrade that lets us track patterns the old mental tools simply can't handle. Classical thinking was good enough for throwing rocks and building houses. Relativity was needed to deal with light, gravity, and the deep structure of reality. And every upgrade hurts. Progress in physics has never been about adding ideas, it's been about abandoning them, letting go of concepts we're emotionally attached to, like the comforting image of time as a flowing river. That loss feels personal, because those ideas are wired into how your brain learned to survive. Here's the strange and beautiful part. Even though your intuition about time is wrong, deeply wrong, it still works. You can boil an egg without knowing entropy. You can meet a friend at 2 p.m. without understanding spacetime curvature. Relativity runs quietly in the background like an engine under the hood. You don't need to understand combustion to drive to the store. But isn't it better to know the engine is there? That question brings us back to the counting experiment, the voice versus the images. This isn't a curiosity. It exposes something unsettling about human understanding. When do people talk about time or physics or even love, they assume they're sharing the same concept. They nod. They agree. They say, yes, I get it, but under the surface, something very different is happening. Each person is running a private translation program. The same words get converted into completely different internal models. I say 1 minute and I see a clock face. You hear a quiet voice counting to 60. We reach the same conclusion, so we believe we agree. But the machinery doing the work is alien on both sides. Physics cares about this because it reveals how fragile common sense really is. Common sense isn't truth. It's just the collection of mental shortcuts you picked up early in life. It's built from your personal imagery, your private metaphors. If time lives in your head as a strip of numbered tape, the idea that time can stretch or bend will feel wrong. If time lives as a rhythm or a voice, the idea that it behaves like space will feel impossible. When physicists try to explain curved spacetime or the quantum vacuum, they aren't just handing you new information. They're asking you to uninstall your operating system. They're asking you to drop the tape measure, to silence the counting voice. And that's why it's hard. That's why it feels unnatural. You're not just learning facts, you're fighting the deepest habits of your own biology.